Outside of a few extreme edge cases, you have these three rivers of self-improvement of philosophy, religion, clinical therapy, and the through line between them is how to avoid self-sabotage. Just got back from a trip to Texas, so I'm feeling my Texas roots. Now it's coming through with my 6-shooters that I always have on me, by the way. If you try to come at me on the streets, watch out. I'm packing hand, finger, 6-shooters at all times. Licensed, but at all times. Self-sabotage. Self-sabotage. What does philosophy, all philosophy, what does all religion, and what does all therapy have in common? The through line between them all is essentially this: how to avoid self-sabotage. The typical church at any corner of the street, the therapy session that's probably happening a few blocks from here between a client and a clinician, the person studying Platonic to Kantian philosophy, to you listening to this episode. Ultimately, what we are pursuing is knowledge on how to avoid self-sabotage, how to get out of our own way. Because there is this great implication. The great implication of life is that if there is some misstep, if there is this ignorance of that misstep, of where things could go wrong, where the boundaries are, and I won't just get in my own way, I could sabotage everything, ruin everything. Therapy might touch on, well, it was a situation that a tragic situation that happened early in your life that led to trauma that's leading to certain downstream effects. You might touch on that topic, but it's ultimately not, hey, how do we get in a time machine and go back 30 years and fix it? It's how do we understand it so that we can work around it? So you can understand a certain behavioral pattern you might have so that you can ensure you don't repeat some mistake. So you can ensure you don't have some blinders on, blind spots around that aspect of what might compel you to do certain things. It is, okay, here is the golf course. Here's the tragedy and trauma that happened 30 years ago, and you got to play around it. Don't be ignorant of the fact that there are these variables at play on this metaphorical golf course. But ultimately, it's up to you to play around it. Don't make any missteps knowing that that is a blind spot, perhaps. Still, the therapy rarely, I don't know of any therapies that 13 sessions in is like, yep, it's everybody else's fault. There's nothing you can do. There might be outlines of the borders and boundaries which to navigate one's life, and then it's about how to move forward and not sabotage your next move. This through line of how to avoid self-sabotage. Outside of a few extreme edge cases, you have these three rivers of self-improvement of philosophy, religion, clinical therapy. And the through line between them is how to avoid self-sabotage. Not just how to make progress, but how do you make sure you don't enter a one-way door of self-ruin? What does this say about ourselves? Well, it says that deep down, we know we are capable. Capable of progression, capable of regression, maybe not even capable of knowing that we're capable of greatness, but we certainly know that we might make a one-way mistake where there is no return. Mindful that we should be really afraid of ignorance. Capable of stepping in the eternal out of bounds where things could go disastrously wrong if we are not careful. This awareness that we need to be careful because we are so capable. It's at the heart. It is the heartbeat of self-development, of self-evolution. It is the heartbeat of progress, is knowing that we are capable. But the downside of so much within the realms of philosophy, religion, and therapy is that they barely touch on the subject of you. One of those buckets might paint you as shameful, a sinner, only saved by the grace of the divine. One bucket might paint you as this brilliant, wise person because you got a PhD in essentially history, masked as philosophy in the West. You see, all of these deal with you, the subject of you, and yet so few of them ever cover you. So few of them ever outline who you are. There is this hand waving that you're capable, and yet never a dissection, analysis, an exposition on who you are. This philosophy certainly says you are capable, certainly says avoid self-sabotage. But such a significant, nearly the totality of the philosophy is on just how capable you are, for better or worse. Just how capable you are. How capable are we? This philosophy, if you want a summary of the whole philosophy, go to episode 1. If you want a dissection of this philosophy, soup to nuts, beginning to end, read Vedantic Treatise. Vedantic Treatise is the best book on this philosophy, written in just very modern language, plain English, nothing woo about it. That is the real. I hope listeners use this as a fun, infomercial, entertaining on-ramp to reading Vedantic Treatise. So then doing the online lectures through the app of Vedanta World's app, the ashram that we all study with each morning. But this philosophy is all about how capable you are. If you want the full breakdown, like I said, episode 1, the intro to Vedanta, is the 15-minute breakdown of this whole philosophy. But what this philosophy says about you is that you have 3 equipments to navigate life. I cover this every 10th or 15th episode because it is the central practical contribution of this timeless philosophy. You have a body, you have a mind, and an intellect to navigate through life. To avoid self-sabotage on the downside, to achieve anything on the upside, comes down to how well developed your intellect is. You see, you have these 2 inner equipments to navigate any obstacle, any challenge, any event in life, any experience you're going through. You obviously have your body, you have your mind, which those 2 things we talk about culturally quite often, but this philosophy outlines you have one other internal equipment. You have a mind, yes, but a subtler, more powerful, much more mature, capable inner equipment, the intellect, to guide the mind. The intellect is your ability to discern, to make a judgment call. The mind is where we feel. It's our seat of emotions. It's our preferences, our likes, our dislikes. But the intellect says, despite our preferences, likes, dislikes, be damned, this is the right decision. And with a weak intellect, one thing is guaranteed. Over and over and over, we will experience self-sabotage. You see, each of these, philosophy, therapy, religion, they're all about how to avoid self-sabotage, and none of them get into your capabilities. None of them explicitly talk about what you're capable of, and none of them outside of Vedanta, outside of Advaita Vedanta, that I have ever come across. There are some shades of dual systems thinking in modern psychological schools, the System 1, System 2, that in the last 5-10 years has started to scratch at this, that there are two inner equipments. But conventional psychology doesn't touch on this. You have things like CBT and DBT that get so close, and yet they don't actually name this other equipment. Cognitive behavioral therapy, being CBT. This gets so close and doesn't explicitly name this other equipment. It's like talking about your dexterity, but not outlining that you have a left hand and a right hand to navigate the world. This philosophy is so explicit. The intellect is your capacity to, as it's described in this philosophy, to see the end in the beginning, and it is the capacity for you to avoid self-sabotage and to reach any goal you set for yourself. Any goal. It might be to get that promotion. It might be to become a great parent. It might be to make $1 billion. It might even be to reach enlightenment. And the intellect will take you all the way there. And maybe all of those if your heart so desires. How to avoid self-sabotage. Instead of beating around the bush, this philosophy is so straightforward. Cultivate the intellect. How do we do that? Daily study and reflection. Reflection is 100,000 times more powerful than listening or hearing. So take, as Charlie Munger says, great investor, one of the best investors of all time, and he says, take a simple idea and take it seriously. It's great framing for reflection. Take any idea with it. And any of these reflections within these episodes, maybe it's the idea that you have an intellect and not just a mind that maybe you've heard 10 times. You've heard me mention a dozen times. Take it seriously. Reflect on it for 3 days, 100 days in a row. Carve out 5, 10, 15 minutes in the morning. Reflect on it. What are the implications of that? What is this saying? What does this mean for my day-to-day life? What would this mean for everyone around me if I were to develop it? How do you even notice when your intellect is trying to speak up and your mind just jumps into the driver's seat and takes over? These are all things that come from reflection. Starting your day with reflection amplifies the sensitivity to all of these things and more throughout the rest of the day. How to avoid self-sabotage. Study, reflect daily. Cultivate your intellect. And get anywhere you want to go. That is today's reflection on the Daily Vedantic. We'll see you next time.